about your update of environment variables.
Okay. So did everyone get to see the GitHub issue on SROS? Kind of has it laid out. I think the link is also in the doc.
Yeah. Do you want to give us just the summary of it real quick?
So the bit is the keys, or the environment variables used to be like security root directory and security directory override, and they would just be path files that you'd either specify to the root of the key store, or the particular folder with the node security artifacts. We kind of changed things a little bit up to while we were migrating to enclaves, to be instead like the enclaves folder, but we kind of rolled that back to be just the key store, because we thought there might be other things we'd like to provide to the as a runtime security arguments than just necessarily the enclaves folder, such as breaking up public or private attributes, or maybe some other metadata we'd like to keep in the key store. The larger region, like why we decided to push the name paths of context or enclaves into its own subdirectory in the key store instead of having it be flat. Then for the security enclave override, that was where you could override the runtime argument. Instead of having it again to be another path, I mean that path is already path to the key store. That prefix is already specified in the key store environment variable, so it seemed kind of redundant. What you're really just trying to do is specify what name you want to force, like just the root name enclave, or maybe a debug enclave name. So in that sense, this change also includes where, instead of a path, you just specify the fully qualified enclave name.
And then the fact that it's a subdirectory is just sort of an implementation detail.
Yeah, so that way later, if we decide to support different URIs for the key store, like something like Vault,
then it still does make sense. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, you can still change the enclave override, and you just specify a different URI to the key store environment variable. So it helps.
Although that would mean that you would still be locked into using that key store, right? I mean, whereas right now you could use a completely different key store.
Yeah, so I was thinking, like, if there were the use cases, if you had a process and you wanted to use the override to point to an entirely different context and different key store. In the issue, I had kind of made an argument that that might be easier to shoot yourself in the foot, because the key stores won't have common certificate authorities or source of trusts, and for advanced users, if you did want to use an entirely different key store, you would set the key store environment variable. So I think it makes it a little more obvious in what you're doing and a little bit harder to do something wrong.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
So that's about it. I think the CI is a little red right now, but I think once it's back up, we'll just run the test. And if any of you guys want to look at the changes, most of it's relatively simple, except for maybe like the one advanced thing is like maybe the RCL or the system security tests, where I just kind of changed it up to match the lookup behavior of how the override works.
And it's just the 4 that are linking back to this one, is that right?
Yeah, those one's the design doc, but the other 3 are RCL, ROS2, and system tests.
Excellent.
That's
awesome.
all I have.
Cool. Good work. And we'll go to Sid. Can you tell us about CIS benchmarks?
Sure. I just wanted to kind of breach this topic. You'll hear a lot more about it later, but something we're going to start working on here shortly. Kind kind of set the groundwork for it is to create a CIS benchmark for both ROS 1 and ROS 2. Not sure how much you're familiar with the benchmarks. It's definitely something for a lot of enterprise customers interested in securing to industry best practice standards and so on. So we're going to start working towards building out a benchmark. What that means very practically is we're going to take the Ubuntu 18.04 benchmark that exists, apply that to ROS 1, some sample environments, make sure everything's working, and then put that out as a draft for community feedback. And then that opens up the benchmark to CIS members. In order to participate directly with the benchmark, I think you do have to be a CIS member. I'm not sure who here is a member, but I'm sure a lot of the discussions will come back here if there's questions about certain settings, whether things should be locked down and whatnot. So that's going to work. That's in progress. Once we get the ROS 1 benchmark laid out, then we'll move quickly into ROS 2. And
I believe that's free. That's free to join, right, Sid? I don't remember having a problem with it.
So it is free
you just have to make an account.
Yeah, so you can. So Canonical's a member. So if you made an account with your Canonical email address, you'll get full access.
Right, but I mean to make comments. Yeah, to make comments, you can just make an account, right? Anybody could.
I am not entirely certain. So I don't want to say 100% for sure. Have you been able to do that without with the?
I used my Canonical because I wanted to be a part of the org, but that's been a little while. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I know there are limits, and I know for sure that you can't get the tools without a paid account. But you can download the PDF files that make up the benchmark. So there's some things that are available without membership. Other things require membership. So we'll continue exploring that. I think the other thing to note, I think, is we are going to start with the Ubuntu benchmark, but the CIS benchmarks have the ability to do a ROS benchmark on top of other operating systems if we want to kind of grow out the benchmark offerings. So does anybody have any questions or comments, thoughts, experience about working with the benchmarks?
This is performance benchmarks? I'm sorry.
No, this is security. And it's a sort of industry accepted standard. It's really common in cloud and enterprise. So it's something we're doing for it's an open benchmark once they're published. And everybody can say we're at this level of security through the CIS group. So it's a lot of things like a lot of useful things like firewalls and password standards, and then a lot of what could be argued as a little bit nitpicky, like changing default UMask and things like that.
Does that get back to the ROS security white paper that Canonical put out not too long ago?
Yeah, well, that was a bunch of what we'd consider best practices. That's us telling you what to do, but what we think is a best practice. Whereas CIS is a not-for-profit group that's setting their standard, so it's sort of more a neutral party that's accepted in all, accepted by all. So it goes to, I would say, when you're going in to get ROS accepted from another. In a certain deployment, you don't have to come up with a security standard. You can say, we meet this benchmark.
Well, that sounds pretty interesting to me. I mean, I don't know if we as a group have discussed in the past other standards, but this sounds like a great first initiative. So, yeah, I mean, I personally don't know about this, but I'll try to read on it and do provide feedback if something interesting comes up. I think this is great, guys.
Cool. Yeah, we have them.
Yeah. So I'll just just a little bit of background. I mean, the CIS benchmarks tend to be invaluable if you think about an organization that wants to bring in a piece of technology and they want to make sure it's secure. You can either read through all the documentation and understand all the standards, or you can just take the benchmark and apply the benchmark and find those things that don't work for your specific environment. And then, from a security standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, when you're done, you can say, I am in adherence with best practice standards. So I'm at least as good as the other guy. So it gives you a really nice kind of comfort level, from management as well as from practical. And also, if you're going to implement something like ROS, you don't have to dig into all the details about which directories need to be set, which services should be turned off, which things you allow through the firewall. That should all come with the default benchmark. So, but I mean, it's recognized too. It's a growing thing. It's going to take a lot of growth. It's crawl, walk, run. So we're going to get something out the door, and then over time we'll have something that we can continue to, tweak and tune to make a secure deployment. So.
Sid, if you could take a minute to find a link to the Ubuntu one, I think that might be helpful for the notes, for people to learn what this looks like.
Yeah, and a cool thing about it is it's not binary. It's not you are CIS or you're not. Like it's not like FIPS compliance. It's a score, so you can do what works for your environment. So there's CIS for almost all distros, and so obviously you can tailor it towards your use case. But it helps further ROS. We don't have to prove that we're doing this or that, or we've invented this standard. We're adopting an industry-wide standard. So yeah, what we've gone over. So next one, Kyle. Let's talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Joe, I just interrupted. I just wanted to real quick just ask one bit for us to understand, or particularly for myself. So does this initiative of CIS benchmarks apply to ROS or essentially to Ubuntu?
We have them for Ubuntu already. This would be ROS on Ubuntu. It has to be somewhat platform specific, but so we'll do one for ROS on Ubuntu. And then people can take that and apply that to ROS on another distro.
Cool.
Obviously, there's a cost to us to actually get the CIS membership. So we'll focus on Ubuntu first, but then we'll do it on. Well, obviously it's public, so folks can do it on anything else.
Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. So Kyle, why don't you tell us about MVP for RMW?
Yeah. So we've been talking about this the last couple times, I think. Last time Jeremy gave an overview of what he was doing in FastRTPS, but the log to file part of that at least has landed. But what we'd also like to land for Foxy is at least just sort of a minimum viable product to enable the security logging in RMW. And to put that together, I have made a Connects pull request, which I linked in the agenda here, that I think is a good MVP, but it could use some reviews and, well, landing if we all agree on that. And then I can do the FastRTPS side almost exactly like that. We talked, let's see, at least some of you participated in the Google Doc where we kind of outlined the design of speccing out an XML file and stuff. And we just don't have time to do that for this cycle. We can continue that design next cycle, but just to allow people to start playing with it, to make it so that security logging is experimental in Foxy, we need something on the RMW side to actually turn it on. And that's what this pull request does. And actually, I thought maybe I'd share my screen with you to show you what this looks like. And of course, I have several terminal windows that are named the same to figure out which one this is. Come on. And of course, my computer hard locked. Can you guys hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
I can hear you just fine.
Well, I can't do anything now.
One question I had is in the spec it was really vague on like what an event was and
Boy,
how
no
it's
kidding.
encapsulated. Did you figure out what kind of primitives and format that you wanted to report? Like one thing it'd be useful for security is like this handshake failed and this was the participant I tried to connect to, or this was the topic I tried to access and this is such and such, what reason?
Yeah, there's not really much of a standard. A good example to go off of though is you can use this pull request with Connext and actually play with those things. I was going to show you, dang nabbit. I was going to show you an example of exactly an unauthenticated participant joining, for example, and it'll show you that it failed to let that one join. But I mean, basically, it's right now Connext logs all security events to the log along with everything else. So this isn't actually adding anything. It's just pulling the security events out of the existing log and allowing it to be extracted into another system. It's not actually adding any information. So like for Connext, and Faster TPS is going to work this. It works the same way. I guess it's landed now. When you enable security logging, you actually take the security events out of the existing log and you pull them into the security log. But other than that, it doesn't add anything new. So the logs you see now are the information that you'll get. And I'm not,
Okay.
It is not amazing as far as the material included, but I think
so what you see on ST out will now be flying over the wire in RTPS. Is that correct? Oh, I think we lost Kyle.
I think we finally lost Kyle.
So at the moment, as far as I know, things are logged to a file. I'm not sure about Connext. Maybe it also has implemented the log over DDS. But that you can choose at configuration time if you wanted to log to a file and which file, the file path, and if you wanted to log also over DDS. They are not exclusive.
When this is maybe a little bit tangent. Do you think we might have the chance later to write a sort of a nerfed security plugin? Like it does all the checks, but it doesn't do the enforcement. That might help with synthesizing these events while not necessarily blocking the topology of the graph. Like you want to do a dry run saying, what's going to fail with these security policies, but don't stop my application because it's stateful and it needs to reach to some whatever other state to observe.
Yeah, how is that related to logs? You would pass the log and information from there? Or?
Yeah, so like this logging plugin could then consume these synthesized security events from the nerfed security plugin. It's all plugins, I guess, but never mind.
Yeah, so
The tangent.
I don't know if that answers your request, but our initial midterm goal, let's say, is to have all of the logs that are flying over RTPS to be logged also in syslog, so that you can use any of your favorite SIEM tool.
Cool. You just need all right.
Go ahead, Ruffin. We don't have Kyle, so we'd be making up the next one too.
Yeah, so it just needs help with reviews, I guess.
Yeah,
we could add some review, and again, the changes are actually very small. We just want a check on the new environment variables we are introducing, And as Kyle mentioned, the current proposed design isn't perfect, but we don't have time to reiterate over it for this cycle, and we can totally change it for the next ROS cycle. So yeah, a +1 would be nice. Hey, Kyle.
Well, that did not work according to plan.
Yeah, well, you're flexible. That's all that counts. I think we basically wrapped up the security logging. So maybe we could jump to the public API curation for SROS2 utilities.
Yeah, sounds good. And I can give you guys a demo outside of the meeting too. Yeah, so over the last week, we've been working on moving all of the SROS2 API that was just sort of public by default, but not needing to be public. We moved it private, and we're going through the process of curating the public API so that we can actually agree to support that for, the LTS that is Foxy. We've got a document started that outlines the functionality that we think we need and what it might look like, but we would love some more voices there, and the ability to actually make a decision and make it happen. So if you guys want your voices heard, please jump in on that doc. Let us know if any of the functionality that you need is not going to be considered public, and we can revamp that. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a link to that doc.
And just to add, we finally have something consuming the SROS API. We're working on a ROS launch extension that uses SROS and NodeL to automatically generate the key store, generate the keys, and secure whatever you're launching.
Yeah, it gives us a little insight into the type of API that we need.
Cool. So this is the first time we are actually done ahead, unless anyone wants to cover Mikhail's discussion about the
I think
RCL issue.
I think we just I'll cover that real quick. I think we copied it from the last agenda because during our last meeting we thought Foxy would be closed by now and we could make a call on this. But it's not. And the context stuff, the enclave stuff is still sort of in flight. So I think we need to kick this one more time.
Okay, cool. Anybody have something that you want to talk about? Going once, twice? Okay. On that note, everybody gets 6 minutes back. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Later, folks.
Have a lovely day. Stay safe,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.